Hi, welcome to Audiobook Academy. This is a self-paced audiobook. There's no need to keep an eye on things. Just pay attention. Thank you for taking the time to listen. This is a book summary of Resilient: How to Grow an Unshakable Core of Calm, Strength, and Happiness by Rick Hanson. When things don't go according to plan, how do you respond? Using resilience resources, we can learn to cope better in a stressful environment. Our well-being is enhanced and expanded when we have the ability to bounce back from adversity with resilience. And, isn't this exactly what the doctor prescribed? We're provided with ways to access our inner strength and connect with our needs so that we can thrive. Rick Hanson is the doctor in this case. This journey towards long-term resilience can be guided by Dr. Rick Hanson, who possesses both the personal and professional credentials needed to do so. One of the world's most popular psychologists and best-selling authors, Rick Hanson is also a senior fellow at the Greater Good Science Center at University of California, Berkeley, UC Berkeley. Honest anecdotes from Hanson's childhood are interspersed with practical advice in the book Resilient. Positive psychology, neuroscience, and ancient wisdom all have a hand in the methods and philosophies we use today. Forrest, Rick's son, co-wrote the book and serves as a consultant and writer. These are safety, contentment, and a sense of belonging. To be secure, one must be able to take physical and psychological cover. Being able to satisfy physical needs like hunger, but also positive emotions like contentment and gratitude, contributes to a sense of well-being. When we are taken care of and take care of others, our need for connection is satisfied. If any of these needs aren't being met, we need to figure out why and how to fix it. The 4 R's represent 4 possible approaches to addressing these issues. In this book, we'll learn how to identify and address these 4 R's, recognizing them, resourcing what we need, regulating our thoughts, emotions, and actions, and relating well to others. Meditation techniques, positive psychology tools, personal examples, and neuroscientific explanations are all used to illustrate the 12 inner strengths of the human spirit in this book. Let's take a closer look at this for a moment. Our 3 most basic needs, safety, satisfaction, and connection, have not changed, despite the many changes that have occurred in the world. Identifying when these needs are not being met and working out how to meet them is essential. Let's take a look at our brains to see where these needs come from. Hanson provides a succinct summary. He compares the human brain to a house. The brain stem, located on the first floor, is responsible for keeping us safe. This is our brain's most primitive and reptilian region. The subcortex, which includes the hypothalamus, thalamus, amygdala, and basal ganglia, is located on the second floor of the brain. This is the mammalian brain at work, searching for pleasures such as food and warmth. The neocortex, a more recent primate portion of our brain, resides on the roof's top floor. The neocortex broadens our sense of well-being from a sense of security to one of belonging and reason. This is the place where empathy, language, planning, and compassion are all based. Our minds are full of animals, according to Hanson. There are animals who freeze when confronted with danger, mice who search for cheese, and monkeys who seek out their tribe. However, this isn't as simple as we might think, because each floor has its own unique requirements. Let's take a look at an example to see why this is the case. Our ancestors had to make difficult decisions about their own survival on a regular basis. As long as they were in the vicinity of a tiger, they could either believe that one was lurking in the bushes, or they could believe that it wasn't there. Second, we can see that it's a matter of life and death. To ensure their own survival, our ancestors frequently adopted this mentality. Our brains are still hardwired to expect danger despite the fact that the world has changed dramatically. These feelings of paranoia, pessimism, and anxiety make us prone to depression and apprehension. Even if we are aware that our fears are unfounded, our brains continue to act as if they are. Also, we tend to overestimate the danger and underestimate our own internal resources and coping mechanisms. There will be a lot of anxiety and less resilience as a result of this. There are 4 ways in which this wiring can be changed and our well-being improved in this book. Each pathway can be strengthened even further by learning and applying different inner strengths. We can make use of a total of 12 inner strengths to get us through this journey. Take a closer look. Intuitive strengths connected to the 4 pathways. It's a good idea to think of the 4 R's as a way of categorizing our strengths. 3 inner strengths are needed for each pathway, which is an easy way to break it down. In order to better understand our own situation, we need to tap into our inner resources of compassion, mindfulness, and education. Then, with grit, gratitude, and self-assurance, we can tap into our inner resources. Regulating our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors is the final step in the process. In order to achieve this, we must be composed, self-motivated, and able to cultivate closeness. In the end, it is through courage, aspiration, and generosity that one can connect with others. What may appear to be mundane daily experiences can be used as building blocks for our brains, according to Hanson. It is possible to rewire our brains by repeatedly activating neural circuits. This is a two-step process. To begin, we must determine what it is we hope to develop. We may, for example, wish to cultivate a sense of gratitude. There are two more steps that need to be taken in order to achieve lasting change. Just as with building muscle, you need to put in small amounts of effort every day for a short period of time in order to see results. When you put in a little effort, you'll get a lot of reward. Each of the 4 R's will be addressed in turn. Compassion, mindfulness, and education help us to better understand our own needs. Compassion can appear to be a vague concept at first. In contrast, the brain's motor planning areas light up and gear up for action when we feel compassion, as shown in this experiment. It's common for us to show kindness to our friends, but we often forget that self-compassion is just as important. Start by writing a simple statement about self-compassion and reading it aloud every day to remind yourself of the importance of self-compassion. "I am on my own side," for example, is given as an illustration of the idea that the brain can be shaped by repeated exposure to experiences. We accomplish this by paying attention to and building on the little things that go right in our lives. At the end of the day, these experiences can be as trivial as lying down on the couch. It's also possible to start out with a good feeling and make it even better by paying closer attention to it. It's true that small things can grow into big ones. The ability to remain in the present moment is referred to as mindfulness. The problem is that we have to maintain our attention regardless of what is going on around us. Because, as is so often the case, we tend to lack mindfulness at the most crucial times. It is possible to maximize positive experiences and minimize negative ones by cultivating a mindful attitude. A muscle can be developed by practicing mindfulness even for brief periods of time throughout the day. Setting our phones to random times can serve as a helpful reminder to practice mindfulness. When conversing with others or performing tasks, we can use our breathing to reduce our stress levels. A place to hide can also be helpful. In this context, the term refuge refers to a quiet spot like a library or a quiet activity like playing with the dog. Perhaps a memory of a place that felt safe as a child can serve as a form of refuge. You never know what kind of significance it holds. Knowing that someone cares about you could also be a motivating factor. It's important to pay attention to how you feel when you're in this safe place and try to absorb it. It's time to put these ideas into action. The first step is to simply observe what is around us, even if it is unpleasant. We can also make an effort to lessen the negative by examining and attempting to let go of the things that cause us pain. As a third option, let's work on boosting the good. In other words, you're supposed to let it be, go, and come in. For example, we can look at it or remove weeds or plant flowers in the garden. When we cultivate compassion and mindfulness, we can better respond rather than react. We are more emotionally and physically balanced when our 3 basic needs are being met. This is known as the green zone, and it's the area that's most likely to respond to your actions. The red zone, also known as the reactive mode, is where we go when our needs aren't being met. It is the reactive mode that wears us down, while the responsive mode helps us grow. When it comes to building resilience, there is a fine line between too much and too little. Because we don't want to stay in the reactive mode forever, it's useful when danger presents itself. Identifying our needs also necessitates education. One's ability to learn is the most powerful of all powers. Our genes encode about 1/3 of our characteristics, the other 2/3 come from experience. It's important to remember that learning is a 2-step process, activation and installation. Despite the fact that we may have an experience, we must repeat this over and over. The changes in our brains are permanently etched in our minds when we practice them over and over. Perseverance can be improved by practicing, building on, and sticking with a task for a period of time. By following these 4 steps, we can ingrain this knowledge in our brains. In order to better understand this, let's examine the acronym HEAL. H stands for haven't really noticed. To enrich it, one must feel it deeply and stick with it. One way of doing this is by allowing yourself to be completely absorbed in the experience. As for L, the goal is to connect it to more challenging emotions. To link is to take note of both your good and bad traits. Because having, enriching, and absorbing are sufficient for learning, linking is unnecessary. It's also not always easy to deal with negative content. This is a problem. We have experiences, but they don't stick. Adding depth to an experience can be as simple as paying attention and staying with it for a few seconds at a time. It's possible to heighten our awareness of the present moment by taking deeper breaths, focusing our attention on similar emotions, and noticing anything new or different. Once we know why we care, we can appreciate it more. We then take it in. It's time to let it sink in and see what's encouraging and hopeful about it. The following is an example of how a link might work. It's possible that a coworker has said something offensive to you. As a result, you may choose to recall a piece of advice from a friend or family member that was comforting and reassuring. Associative learning occurs when two things are held together at the same time in the brain. Increasing the positive side's influence on the brain, on the other hand, will require more effort on our part. A solid foundation can be laid by bringing compassion, mindfulness, and conscious learning to bear on identifying and meeting our own needs. The power of perseverance, gratitude, and self-belief. Agility, or the ability to take charge of our own lives, can be developed through grit. It's possible to find even a tiniest bit of progress even when our options are limited. We can choose what to say or not say if we find ourselves in a heated debate. Grit necessitates tenacity, and tenacity necessitates life. To maintain our health and vitality, we must also attend to the physical needs of our bodies. Positive thoughts, feelings, and actions flow more easily when our bodies are in good shape. Gratitude is another tool at our disposal. Research shows that cultivating an attitude of gratitude increases positive emotions like optimism and compassion, as well as physical and mental well-being like a more restful night's sleep. A conscious effort must be made to prevent us from rushing past the pleasures of life. The idea is to keep a gratitude journal in which you record all the little things that make you happy. The bond we form with our primary caregivers during our first 2 years of life has a significant impact on our sense of self-assurance. Because even if our childhood attachments weren't adequate, we can still find more security as adults. Creating a truthful account of our youth will take time, but it is essential. We can, however, begin to build healthy attachments by treating others as we would have liked to be treated in previous relationships. This section is all about the first and second dart. Some of the first things we may be hit with are things we cannot avoid, like criticism at work. To avoid the second dart, we must remember that it is the one we throw at ourselves. Resentment and grudges fester in our hearts and minds. It just so happens that our inner critic is a skilled dart thrower, which is fortunate for us. Take note of what your inner critic has to say and see if it sounds like anyone you know. Is it possible that you heard something similar as a child? Ellen Heal is an option at this point. Do you recall linking? Perhaps you could imagine an internal caring committee made up of people who represent the various types of support you've received throughout your life. These people could even be made up. To better understand how others perceive you as a good person, try this exercise. We must also learn to self-regulate if we are to meet our own needs. Making ourselves calm and creating a warmth of relationship. In the words of P. Mitchell, you are the sky. Aside from the weather, nothing else. The fight, flight, or freeze response is a common one. Both the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems are engaged in this response. A car's brake and accelerator are analogous to these devices. Rest and digest, or the parasympathetic system, is responsible for slowing the heart rate and refueling the body. It's the brake that's causing all of this. When it comes to our sympathetic activity, however, we're more like the gear shifter. A rush of adrenaline and cortisol rushes through our bodies. In the presence of pleasant feelings, it is a boon, but when it is coupled with unpleasant ones, we become anxious. As a result of living in the modern world, we are often pushed into sympathetic nervous system mode. As if on a seesaw, when one system rises, the other falls, and this requires a little help to maintain equilibrium. Slow breathing can help our reactions in such situations. The parasympathetic nervous system can be activated by using slow, deliberate breathing. Progressive relaxation can also be practiced by starting with the feet and working our way up to the top of the body, releasing tension in every part of the body. Helpful methods include biofeedback and physical activity, such as yoga and Tai Chi. A vital source of power, our sympathetic nervous system kicks in when we need it most. However, we must be inspired in order to put this to good use. Each of us has a different reward system in place to keep us motivated. We can keep our motivation up if we pay attention to the rewards we crave. A strong sense of self-determination can lead to a deeper level of intimacy, according to Hanson, because in order to get the most out of we need to keep our focus on me. If we take care of our own needs, we're more likely to be receptive to others. Is it possible to maintain our individuality when others want us to give them something, are upset with us, or try to dominate us? This is influenced by our innate temperaments as well as our surrounding circumstances. We need to consider how easy it is for us to express our thoughts, State our desires, and trust our own judgment even if others disagree. What's the best way to go about doing this? It's possible to imagine a physical boundary between ourselves and another, like a line drawn on the ground. It might be a good idea to think back to a time when you felt strong and decide whether or not to put up with something. Call your own caring committee and crank up the volume on what they have to say to you, if necessary. However, developing empathy is also important, as it allows us to better understand and interact with those around us. Our perspective must be shifted, and we must become more culturally competent. We also need to pay attention to other people's micro-expressions and be aware of their pain. As a result, the R stands for regulate. Possessing the ability to communicate effectively with others and to do so with a spirit of generosity. To stand up for ourselves requires courage. As a result, it means speaking from the heart to avoid leaving anything unspoken. It may be necessary to talk about talking and compile a list of do's and don'ts before we enter into important discussions. In addition, we must establish facts, know our values, and make requests rather than demands. We need to know these things. Hanson encourages us to lean into the future so that we can pursue our dreams. That being said, the more prepared we are for failure, the more likely we are to achieve our goals. This may necessitate us determining which tasks are ours and which belong to others. It's also important for us to embrace generosity, see ourselves as givers, be forgiving, and take into account the perspectives of those around us. Our circle of us, on a larger scale, can be widened by not dividing people into two groups, those who share our values and those who don't. To sum it up, being resilient allows us to thrive, and building the skills of everyday resilience is something that we can all benefit from. To improve our lives, we must first learn how to alter our brains. The authors demonstrate the practical how of experiencing, growing, and using key mental resources for resilient well-being, as they put it. Are you ready to take a leap of faith into the unknown? Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Please don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. See you in next audiobook.